webinar. All right, so we're now recording. Hopefully we're in the right place here learning about the 2021 Public Library Annual Report. I'm Maria Bernier, the State Data Coordinator. I think I know everybody by now, but hi, it's me, just in case we haven't met before. What we're going to cover today is some basic stuff about where to find the form, how to move around the Excel form just for your own ease of use. I'll delve into some specific questions both on the form and questions that I've gotten over the years about what to do with it, what goes where, how to use it. And we will end with some hopefully important takeaways that will help you over the next month or so as you're working on your report. I do want to say, I started offering this webinar last year, so I may repeat myself from last year. If you attended this last year, you probably hear some familiar things. Maybe it'll be helpful, maybe not. But if you have been paying attention and attending the other webinars about changes to the annual report, new questions, things like that, some of this may feel familiar to you. So just an FYI, you can tune out if you want and come back. That's all right with me. But I always like to start any of these webinars where I talk about the annual report by contrasting the state annual report with the reports that you're collecting for your library. And just to mention, the state report is data that we're collecting on behalf of every public library in Connecticut, and we're sending to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for inclusion in their public library survey. So in addition to every library in Connecticut, every library in other states across the country is answering these same questions. We're sharing those questions nationwide. And that's why it can take a long time to change those questions. And you've probably seen that as we go along. When there's a crisis like a pandemic, we can add a few questions pretty quickly, but otherwise it takes a long time to change those questions. And I'm going to go ahead and mute people. Great. And you can use the chat box if you'd like to send me questions. That would be great. And in addition to these shared questions from IMLS, each state can also add their own questions to the state report for our own purposes. And we absolutely do that in Connecticut. And this year you'll be able to see which ones are Connecticut specific questions, so just us, versus national or federal questions that everybody's answering. So you can see the difference there. But the state annual report, the state report that we send to IMLS for the public library survey is not a complete representation of what your library is doing. And I know that, right? Like I get questions all the time. Where do I put this in the report? Where do I put that in the report? And I have to say, well, we don't collect that on a national basis, but you can absolutely collect that information for your own purposes at your library to report to your funders and your community. And some examples of that are reference questions. So in the state report, there's only one question about all of the reference transactions that your library is completing over the course of a year. And I know that reference is a complex thing, right? Like you have entire departments of people who are dedicated to reference. And there's a lot more data that you can pull out of those interactions to use than what you are submitting to me. So that's why, again, keep track of that. Keep track of all of these things. Report them up to your funders, to your stakeholders, and just let them know all the wonderful things that you're doing, because we don't get to smush them all into the state report. So Joan asks if anyone else is experiencing a blank screen. That I don't know. Maybe you guys could hop into the chat. Karen says she's okay. Amy is not experiencing a blank screen. So Joan, double check your settings, your Zoom settings, and see what you got. You might have switched, Joan, your speaker view. So make sure that you can see what I'm sharing on screen. Okay, so I want to, okay, I'll let you back in, Joan, when you come back. And Kim says you can see the presentation and the attendees who are not on camera. All right, I'll let you back in, Joan. We'll see you in a sec. Okay, while we're here, just want to mention again, our annual report is always covering the period July 1 through June 30. So it's a state fiscal year, July 1 through June 30, every single time. And your report is always due to me November 15th. That's actually a state deadline. So we're sort of stuck with that one. And you're either tracking things throughout the year, like your programs, your circulation over the course of that entire 12-month period, or you're counting things as of June 30th, like your holdings. So there are some guides in the report form itself to remind you whether this is counting over the course of the year or counting as of June 30th. And we can look at those as we go in. Also, an encouragement that if you are not tracking your stats according to these annual report questions and categories, you may want to start doing so to make your life easier as you get to the end of the reporting year. So if you're already tracking your circ and tracking your holdings according to the categories that we use in the annual report, or you're conglomerating it up into different categories, we might be able to make this final report easier for you as you get the data in a more granular way. Hopefully that was clear. I also want to encourage you to strive for consistency from year to year. So consistent methodology and consistent counting from year to year of your stats. I do know that changes happen, and it usually happens when there's a new director who comes in, or a new department head, or a new children's librarian, that they look at the past year's reports and say, I have no idea where those numbers came from, but based on my interpretation of this question and these definitions, here's what I feel are appropriate, accurate numbers for what we're doing at our library. So I can actually see sometimes over the course of the years in trend reports, you can tell when there's a new director or a new librarian who comes on board and really starts to rethink what you're counting and how and why. And I love it when that happens, because I love it when people are actually paying attention to the numbers and paying attention to the data. So again, strive for both accuracy, right? So you're being accurate in terms of the questions and the definitions, and you're being consistent from year to year. And you can leave yourself notes in the form, and I encourage you to do that, right? Like leave little breadcrumbs or leave a little paper trail or some kind of notes for yourself and your future self and whoever comes after you to remember how you got those numbers from year to year and how you came up with that data. And so let's hop out of this particular PowerPoint, 2 slides. We're going to hop over here to the LibGuide, and you can see up here this URL, which I am going to email you after we're done, so you don't have to keep track of that. This is the URL where all of the annual report stuff lives. And Joan, I just want to double check. Are you still able to see now my LibGuide? Are you able to see a screen? Drop me a little note in the chat and let me know what's going on with you. I don't want to lose you. But here's where all of the annual report stuff lives. And there's great amounts of statistical data on our LibGuide, right? So there's a statistical profile page here where I'll share all of the data kind of after the fact. And that's a great one. The annual report tab is the second green tab here. There's some chart and report creators. And that's a whole nother hour-long webinar. Like, this is cool stuff, the chart and report creators. There's some other great stuff over here, flyers and advocacy resources. But we're really going to be looking at this annual report tab today. So that's where we're going to click. Let me make this font just a little bit bigger so it's easier for you guys to see. Hopefully that helped. Shucks, Joan, you can hear me. All right, and the recording will have all the pictures, hopefully, so you'll be able to see it on the recording. But chime in if I say something weird that doesn't make sense, or drop a little note in the chat. That would be great. So all of our annual report stuff is here, and I'm going to scroll down a smidge. Let's see. All of this stuff, how to complete the form. There are some great tips right here. And you'll see, here's some recordings of the past webinars that I did. And this afternoon, I'm going to change this link right here from register to recording. So our recording is going to go right here if you want to come back and watch it again, or if you feel like watching previous sessions with other people's questions, those recordings are here. And as we scroll down, There's a little 8-minute video here on how to use the annual report form. It kind of goes over some of the things that I'm going to talk about today in an abbreviated way. And this link right here, the Excel form, that's the actual form itself. We are going to click on that in a sec, but that's where you find the official report form. You download it and fill it out. And as we scroll down, there are a whole lot more PDFs here with additional information. So if you did just want to take a look at the list of questions, that's available as a PDF. The instructions and definitions are right here, and you can print those off in 8 pages. There's a guide here that's a couple pages long. So lots of good stuff as we scroll down. I'm going to hop back up to the top of this tab. So you'll see right here, we're in the 2021 annual report tab, and LibGuides lets us build boxes with tabs and more tabs, right? So, you know, any good library website is like a deep well of information. And that's what we're looking at here. So we've got also information here, changes to the 2021 report. There's a ton of info in there. Additional recordings of past webinars, some info slides here, lots of great lists of the new questions and changed questions. So that's a good place to look. This tab with all kinds of programs data. IMLS changed the program questions this year, and you probably heard about it. Hopefully you heard about it. They've become incredibly more complex and detailed. So this tab about the programs provides you with a spreadsheet where you can keep track of your programs and activities. And as we scroll down here, there's some videos for how to use that form, some info slides, more recordings, and then a lot more detail about what counts as a program, what's an activity, how do we keep track of those, tons of info. And I encourage you to dig into these recordings if you have not seen that information about programs. So this is all here. And my contact info is somewhere on the side. There I am. So if you get stuck, you can usually find my contact info somewhere on the LibGuide page where you are. Okay, that was a whirlwind tour. We're going to hop back to the 2021 annual report tab right here. And we're going to go ahead and click on that Excel form and download it. We will open it, and always make sure that you save it, right? So as soon as you've got this thing on your computer, make sure that you save it, because the last thing you want to do is type, and then lose lots of info. It's going to drive you crazy, I can assure you. So let's see, we want to go ahead and enable our changes. I want to make this a little bit bigger. Sometimes the font is just a little too small. So you see in Excel way down here on the bottom right corner, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and make the font a little bit bigger. That's helpful for blind people like me, so we can zoom in and see it bigger. Or if you have a teensy weensy little screen and you want to try and squeeze more on there, you can actually go smaller, which we're not going to do today. So a little bit bigger, that's how you do that. Let me see, there's a lot of instructions and definitions here, and these change a little bit every single year. So there's this what's new section every single year. I do encourage you to read through that, see what some of the new questions are, some of the changes that are added in here. That will be the brief description of them in the what's new area. And then as we scroll down, some good reminders here. Read this before you begin about the deadline, filling in all the questions. Some answers are pre-filled for you because I have the answers and I can help you out there. You can change some of them, but pre-filled answers that are in blue are either fixed and static, or they're formulas and they can't be changed. So we'll see those as we go into the form. All right, some more reminders. The reminder here, number 9, about the fiscal year period, so the dates that we're looking at. And here's my contact info right there in the form, so you can track me down. And then as we scroll down, there's a lot of definitions. And if you print this out, it's like 8 pages worth of definitions, which I don't encourage you to do because you're never going to use it. My favorite way of finding things in Excel and in pretty much any Microsoft tool is just that Control F, right? So I want to find something, and maybe I want to find those instructions about the Everybody Learns grants, and I can see, oh, right, that goes in the federal income section. That's where I'm gonna put my Everybody Learns, my ARPA, my PPP loans, all of that goes into federal income. So that's a handy way to use the instructions and definitions. Just Control F to find whatever it is you're looking for. Let's see. Now we're going to hop into the survey form. So as we see down here, the very bottom of our screen, right, we're in the instructions and definitions tab. And now we're going to hop over to the actual survey and take a look in there. So here it is. Some of the new features this year, this very first column right here. As I scroll down a little bit, you can see how it changes. So some of the abbreviations here are US and CT, and I think there's an F in here. So CT, any guesses? That's a Connecticut specific question. So if you see a CT in front of it, that's going to be something we use here in Connecticut for our own purposes. That information does not get reported up to IMLS for the public library survey. But as I scroll up, US, that was my favorite 2-letter abbreviation for a federal IMLS question. So everybody in the US is answering that particular question. And then F is sort of a feeder question. So those questions feed into an IMLS national question. So they're sort of picking up little bits of data that I am going to give up to IMLS in some form or another. So all of those little F feeder questions are things that we need to hang on to for the purposes of IMLS and the public library survey. Wendy, I'm going to get to your question when we get down to the federal income section. So hang on to that, and I'll hang on to that as well. Okay, I also want to mention a couple of things have moved around. So your answers column is here, but this reminder column is right next to the answer column. And this moved last year. It's just a little bit more visible. It's a little bit more convenient to spot which answers you still need. So that's right here. And then you've got 2 years worth of answers from previous years, right? So we've got last year, and then we've got 2 years ago. So that's some really nice context. The past couple of years have been funky, right? If we were sort of in a normal trend, I think that 2-year history would be a little bit more helpful to you. And it's absolutely helpful for new directors or new department heads who are looking for that context in terms of what did we answer for this in the past. But because last year, a lot of places were closed for COVID, and this year, a lot of places were closed for COVID, all the numbers are wonky. So that's my other reminder right now. Do not worry if your numbers are wonky. Every other library in the state is experiencing the same thing, right? Everybody's got funky numbers this year in addition to last year. Don't worry about it. IMLS knows it, like everybody knows it. This is another asterisk here. So just send me what you've got, whatever numbers you've got, and we'll put them in the report and I'll take them. And then I'm going to scroll to the right a little bit more, and there's this column for your notes. So you can keep track in your version of the spreadsheet for where you found this information, or who you asked for this information, or what kind of calculations you made internally. But this is a great column just to help you out and to help your colleagues out. And again, for your future self, so you know where it came from. If you want, you can send me a version of the spreadsheet with that column blank and save one for yourself that has all of the breadcrumbs in there. Totally up to you. I don't really care what notes you put in there, but it does make me happy when I see people actually using it, because that gives me a little confidence that you're working toward that consistent and accurate number from year to year. So that's right there in the form for you. Let's see, I think we want to start actually playing with this, and we're gonna start with Hartford. Let me get our chat box out of here. Hartford, come on. And you will find that this little drop-down box, all right, chat's going away, sorry. This little drop-down box is not easy to use. It goes really quickly and it's not much fun, you can't type. So we're gonna play with Hartford just because they are one of the more complex library systems. and we'll be able to see all the bells and whistles of the form that way, just doing the branches and the bookmobile. So you can see how now some of these questions are filled in because those answers don't really change a lot from year to year, right? Like your zip code, your phone number, they don't change much. But if you do need to change them, say Bridget got a new email address, she could just type it in here and be good to go, and it will be all set. You can change things. Let's see, maybe we got a new director here. Whoops, sorry about that. And you just type right over there with better typing skills than I have. So you just change them up. Let's see, there are also lots of pop-up notes in here. And you'll see anytime there's that tiny little red triangle in the upper right corner, that means there's a pop-up note related to that question. And there's usually really good information in the pop-up notes. So just hover your little mouse right over that cell, and the pop-up is going to come up and you can read that additional information. But that's a tiny little visual cue. Thank you, Excel. That little bitty red triangle is our visual note for that pop-up. And let's see, there are some drop-down boxes in the answers column. So you'll see here, anytime you click in the cell with a drop-down box, it'll give you that message to choose, and you'll just pick yes. And then you just go on to the next one, choose from the drop-down menu. We're going to say yes, wholly accessible. So that just gives us a controlled vocabulary for certain questions that makes it easier to pull that data together at the end of the year, so that I can get it all straightened out and don't have to retype everybody's answers to get sums for those. All right, and then I'm going to scroll down a little bit further. This one. So question 1.32 and 1.33, I started adding these little notes where it says new this year, or edited this year, or clarified this year. Again, as a little visual cue to you guys, so that you'll know that's a question you need to pay a little more attention to. So it's a new one, you have not answered it before, so it is going to be something you're going to have to track down or locate and fill in new that you didn't have to do before. Hopefully some of these are easy, your library website is easy. This one, 1.33, which is new this year, is a question that I stole from several other states, just asking you to tell us something you did in the past year that you're proud of. And if you want, you can write me a book in that cell. You can send me photos along with your report, just attach them to the email. Whatever you want to tell me about something you and your staff did that you're proud of, we would like to hear that from you. And I don't know yet, honestly, how we're going to use these. I don't know if they're going to show up in any of our social media, or maybe in our reports up to the state legislature. I really don't know, but it helps us tell the story of public libraries in Connecticut and the great work that you're doing. So I'd love to hear some stories from you in that one, question 1.33. So put your thinking caps on and tell us what you got. Another feature I want to show you, these up and down arrows, if you need to hop to the next section or a previous section really quickly, you can just click on those and it'll hop you down to the next section 3, and say we want to scroll down and we want to hop to section 5, we can just click those arrows. It's just a faster way of zooming around, or you can just come over here and scroll, which is usually what I do, but they're there if you like them. All right, also while we're here, notice these cells that are shaded in blue. Cells like that with that light blue background are either automatically filled in or they're calculations. You see how up here there's a nifty little calculation built into the Excel form so that the form will do the math for you. You don't have to do it. You will not be able to change anything in a blue shaded box. It's just going to hopefully do its work on its own. Now, if you see that one of those blue shaded boxes is not adding up correctly, or there's some erroneous information, just let me know. You can either send me an email or you can put information in the comments box at the bottom of this form and just let me know. Give me a red flag and say, hey, that information is not correct, and I can fix it on my end so that it's accurate when we send it up to IMLS for the Public Library Survey. Okay, now I want to talk about some specific questions. That was really kind of how we move around the form and getting here and there. But I want to talk about some specific questions in the form, just addressing emails that I get from people and how does this work? How does that work? What does this mean? What's the significance? And we're just going to go down in order. If we start with question 1.12, the square feet of your main library. Everybody usually just automatically answers whatever we answered last year. And I think, in fact, it's automatically filled in. But if you have some time to re-examine this number, I encourage you to do so. Just double check either if you've got some architectural plans or you want to remeasure. But this should be all of the area on all floors, so including your basement, including your attic, that's enclosed by the outer walls of the library building, including all the areas that are off limits to the public. And using that definition, sometimes the number of square feet increases. And that's to your benefit if you apply for E-rate Category 2 funding. And with more libraries becoming SIPA compliant and thinking about E-rate, you could actually get more money for infrastructure and computers and things in your library if you have more square feet. So take a look at that. It's all tied together, right? It all works together. So double check your square footage. All right, scrolling down to question 1.30 and 1.31. So these are left over from last year, just asking about curbside pickups and how those went for you. A lot of libraries started curbside pickup last year and you're continuing it. So just give me some dates here. If it's ongoing, you can say it's ongoing. You know, we started it in maybe June 2020 and it's still going. You can say that. This is all an open-ended question. I'm just kind of looking for some input and data from you guys on who's doing what. And then you'll use the drop-down menu here to say whether it was that curbside pickup was for residents only, residents and non-residents, or not applicable because you didn't offer curbside pickup. So those are your options. Let's see, we're going to hop down to section 2. Let me just do a little. Here's this reminder right here in section 2 that these library services questions are covering this whole 12-month period. So that's that reminder at the beginning of each of these sections about what dates you want to take a look at as you're answering. So question 2.1, this is kind of a reminder from last year. IMLS is really particular about this, meaning that your building is open to the public. So that's what you're going to be counting as hours for this question. And I know that the name of it is misleading because there have been many, many hours and many days when library staff were working behind the scenes with the doors closed, when you were answering reference questions and helping people out and doing curbside service, but your building was physically closed to the public. And so just be aware, I know that you're working, you know you're working, you know that your staff is really cranking hard, but you don't get to count those as public service hours. For this question, public service hours, you're only looking at when the building was open to the public. So a kind of caveat to that is if you offered your pickup service in your lobby or your vestibule or your foyer, that counts as your building being open because people are coming into the building, right? They're opening the door, they're stepping over your threshold and entering your library building. So that would count as hours being open for public service. So this question is harder to answer this year because it's not a regular number of hours per week. It can and has changed month to month in some cases. So just be a little more careful in terms of question 2.1 this year. Likewise, question 2.2, the number of weeks that your building was open to the public. So the same guideline, that the building, the doors were physically open to the public. So those are the weeks you're going to count. Even though I know that you were working hard while the doors were closed. But you'll see here, Hartford was open only 37 weeks last year, and maybe a similar number this year. It varies. All right, as we scroll down, question 2.5. This number is very different. Again, you'll see Hartford over the last 2 years. We saw that first year of COVID, and we're going to see the second year of COVID again. This is the number of people who came into the building for whatever purpose. So they may have been coming in just for their foyer pickups. They may have been coming in to repair the elevator or fix the copier. That counts. So keep a head count of all people who came into the building. Obviously, if they didn't come into the building, you don't get to count them, right? If you had a drive-through service or a curbside service where people were not entering the building, you don't get to count them as library visits. But you can count them elsewhere as users of your curbside pickup service. There are other questions for that. So you can keep track of them here and there. Now I'm going to scroll down a little further. Question 2.15 here and 1.5a. The number of Wi-Fi sessions on your library's network. In the past, only about a third of Connecticut libraries have been able to report this number in terms of Wi-Fi usage. And that makes me sad because I know that so many libraries in our state are offering Wi-Fi 24/7, freely accessible to everybody in the vicinity. And I would love it if you could start keeping track of that number so we can start showing the impact of your Wi-Fi access on your community. I need the numbers, right? It doesn't really mean a whole lot to say we have free Wi-Fi. It's a lot more meaningful if you can really start to show the numbers of people who are using that service on a daily, a weekly, monthly, or yearly basis. So please do, if you can, start tracking this, 2.15, and then tell me how you were able to get that number. Let's see if that was an annual count, an annual estimate based on a specific criteria, or you didn't count it. Wendy's question, maybe the state can give us funding to track Wi-Fi sessions. There are some options available. I have a web page that I can send you afterward with some options for how to do that. Let's see, question 2.16, the reference transactions. See, there's that tiny little red triangle up in the upper right corner with that pop-up box, and there's a lot of information there about the reference transactions definition. That number got a little bit tweaked last year, so make sure you're reading that and applying that definition consistently to what you're counting. Also remember that this is non-platform specific. So you're counting reference whether it happens in person face-to-face or on the phone or via some kind of chat feature on your computer, whether it's referenced by texting messages, like however that works, whatever platform you use to conduct your reference work, you can count all of those questions here in question 2.16. All right, as we scroll down a little bit, if your library has branches and bookmobiles, bookmobile singular, they're all singular, you'll check here, and that's gonna hop you over into a whole nother spreadsheet where you're gonna enter first questions about your bookmobile, and then as you scroll down, you'll answer questions about your branches. So those are all here. Just remember to do those if you do have multiple library locations that you're working with. So we're gonna return to the survey. Let's see, we're going to scroll down a little further to all of the program questions. So 2.20. As I mentioned, hopefully you have heard about all of these new questions. They have changed substantially. Thank you, IMLS. So we are breaking them out a little bit more specifically by age. We will be using ages 0 to 5. 6 to 11, 12 to 18, and then I think 19 plus, and then all ages. So that's where we're headed. This is kind of an interim year where all the kids are smushed together for 1 year. So we're doing ages 0 to 11 right now. And next year, they're going to be broken out to that 0 to 5 and then 6 to 11 age range. But we are also looking at whether those programs are happening on site at the library or off site, which is off your library premises, or if they're happening on a live virtual platform like we are right now, we're Zooming right now, or if they are pre-recorded and posted online for people to view later. So those are our program options. And then there's sort of a fifth one, self-directed activities. And as I mentioned, I have done a lot of webinars about those, the differences between those, what all of those mean, how to track those. Hopefully you are using a tracking spreadsheet that I had provided so that you can just take your answers and totals from that tracking spreadsheet and put them into the annual report. That's the easiest way to do it. But there are so many questions here now about programs. And you'll see here's this little blue box that's going to add up some of those program counts and attendance counts for you. So those should be calculated correctly. Let's see as we go down, just a reminder about attendance. As we have in the past, you'll be counting the attendance based on the intended age range of your program. So if your program was intended for adults, you will count all of the attendance as adult attendance. If your program is aimed at toddlers, you're going to count everybody who showed up as attendance for a toddler program. So you will continue to do that. Let's see, we've got some all ages and intergenerational questions. This is the catch-all, right? So if it's, say for instance, chess club, that counts as a program and it's an all ages kind of program. You get teenagers, you get older folks, everybody's welcome. It's intergenerational, maybe it's family oriented, it's all ages. That gets counted as all other. So those go right in here, general programs. The terminology may have shifted a little bit, but it is that sort of catch-all intergenerational range. And then as we scroll down a little further, there's all those wonderful totals that are going to come up. And then there's self-directed activities that come in right down here. So the number of activities and then the number of participants. You'll report all of those here. And that's information. You'll see these are Connecticut specific questions. So we use those number of activities just for Connecticut. We're not reporting those up to IMLS or the national survey at this point. Although that could happen, you never know. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? Self-directed. Great, that was it for section 2. And we're going to scroll down to collections. Section 3, let me come back up. Here's a reminder again, this is your holdings as of June 30, 2021. So there's that reminder right there in the form of the dates that you'll be looking at. And it's only the things that you have in your library collection. You're not counting anything like a CLC swap that you might participate in or anything that you borrowed from us at the service center. You're really just counting things that you specifically own. So that comes into section 3 here, your library collections. As we scroll down, most of these are fairly similar to last year. I do want to mention we dropped a couple of years ago the question about library subscriptions. So you are no longer counting library subscriptions as part of your holdings. And you're not including them in your print books. You're just not counting those any longer at all. So that's a little less work, which is nice. We'll scroll down past these to question 3.1. 71819, so about your licensed databases and electronic collections. This I don't think has changed much from past years. It does include newspapers, consumer reports, as well as those electronic collections like Freeding, Freegal, Hoopla, Gale Virtual Reference Library, all of those things you'll count right here in your local consortia and all other databases and electronic collections. So this one, the state's research databases, that's pre-filled for you. That's already in there. All right, we're going to scroll down this one, 3.21, and successful retrieval from licensed databases. I apologize. This is a perennial thorn in everyone's side. What's a database? What's a licensed database? What's a successful retrieval? Is it a view? Is it a download? It's just a hot can of worms. And every single year, the data coordinators talk about it. We're talking about it again. We're trying to kind of come up with some apples to apples kind of way of comparing. At some point, these questions may change, but for the time being, do the best you can do in terms of counting your retrievals if you do that. And again, this is a great way to keep notes for yourself with specific databases. Just as a reminder for you for next year, say, okay, when I was in this database, I looked at this specific criteria, and this vendor calls it this, and this other vendor calls it that, but they're roughly equivalent, and I'm sticking them together, and that's the number I'm going to use. So do your best with question 3.21, and I apologize in advance for anybody who's got to do that. It is a bear, but get in touch with me if you're stuck, and we'll figure it out. So keeping on to section 4, this is all about circulation. And this is circulating over the entire fiscal year 2021. Some reminders here. You're counting each time you check it out, as well as each renewal. So you're counting the renewals here as circulation. Let me see. Separate section for ebooks, so keep those separate. That's not new. But that's a great reminder right here for how to count your circulation. And we did a year or two ago, oops, I'm sorry, I went too fast. We added this question 4.0, does your library automatically renew physical items? And you'll just pick yes, no, right there. So that's hopefully an easy one. Also, hopefully your consortium can help you with this section in terms of circulation of your items based on specific categories. So make sure that if you're paying for a consortium, they're helping you out with these numbers. That's a great service. We're going to scroll way down past these, all of these different categories. We are going to hop down to this 4.29a. So your Research It ebooks from RB Digital, and then the Research It audio from RB Digital. I pre-filled those after talking with my coworker, Brad Bullis. We pulled out those numbers from RB Digital, and I stuck them in there, so that saves you a little bit of work. So for any library that was using Simply E, hopefully you've been getting numbers monthly from that, and I think Brad can help you with numbers from there. But you will fill in your own, where is it down here? Simply E checkouts will go in question 4.40a, and they all get lumped together. Simply E doesn't differentiate whether it's an ebook or an e-audio. So we'll just throw it in as one number and report that up to IMLS. Now I have to confess, since I just learned about it today, that I accidentally transposed your ebook and e-audio numbers. So a savvy librarian will notice that the numbers I give you are wrong. So just remind me that your numbers are wrong, and I'm just going to change everybody's report. When it comes in, I'm going to put the correct numbers in for the RB Digital ebooks and e-audio. I'll transpose them back and switch them back. They just need to be swapped. Okay, whew. Let's keep scrolling down to question 4.34 other. So downloadable audio, other. That's where you're going to put your streamed and downloaded songs. So a song doesn't have an age range, right? Anybody can listen. It's usually aimed for everybody. So if it's a streamed or download song, you'll throw it into 4.34 other downloadable audio right in there. That'll boost your numbers for sure. Okay, scrolling down, we did your Simply E right here. You'll pop those in, right? And unfortunately, the way Simply E was set up, Brad doesn't actually have access to like a holistic count for everybody. He would have to log into every single library Simply E dashboard to get those numbers. So that's a real bear for us, and something we're looking forward to with the new Palace app is that these numbers are going to be easier for everybody to get going forward. So hooray for Palace. Scrolling down now to 4.50, your interlibrary loan transactions. There's some clarification right up here. Make sure that you're not including borrow it loans here because it's not an ILL, right? A borrow it loan means that an actual person, a non-resident, is coming into your library to borrow an item that's on the shelf. They don't live in town, but they're showing you their library card from their hometown library and borrowing one of your things that's sitting at your library. And that's a borrow it loan, but you don't get to count it as an interlibrary loan because you're not loaning it to another library. You're actually just checking it out to a person that would count as a circulation. So with your ILLs, make sure that you are including patron placed holds if you offer that, and consortium holds if you're part of a network. That does get included here, and all of these borrows and loans right down there. So now scrolling down to the staff section, number 5. There's great info in here. Fabulous info. A lot of people actually use this data in the staff section as they're trying to figure out, what they need to budget for paying staff, how many people they're budgeting for. This is really all helpful information. So I appreciate any data you can give me here. And when we get into the salary things, the salary questions, this current salary information, if you can give it to me as an hourly rate, that's super helpful. I'm going to try and match these hourly rates from year to year, just so it becomes easier for people to compare over time, just to see, what's happening in similar libraries of similar breakups and makeups, just so you can see. It makes it easier to compare, right? If it's hourly rate. So I will try to make those consistent from year to year. And I do get questions about, say this one, the children's librarian rate or the reference adult services librarian's rate, because people will ask me, is that for the head of the children's department, the head of the youth services department, or is that a full-time children's librarian? And I usually say, I don't know. What numbers did you use last year? So again, leave some notes for yourself so you know how you came up with these numbers. If you are lucky enough to have like an entire department worth of people, rock on. You may give a range, as Hartford did. In this case, maybe it's a starting salary, but give yourself some notes for how you came up with that number, and then do that again consistently from year to year, right? So if you give me a starting salary this year, please give me a starting salary next year. Or if you give me a range from year to year, please continue to do that. Or if you do a department head, again, just that consistency from year to year, leaving yourself some notes in that paper trail so you've got a way to recreate it. Now we're going to scoot down to section 6. Whoopsie, which is all these COVID questions. We're stuck with some of these again for a second year. There are fewer of them because we were able to get rid of some according to IMLS. They said, well, that question is moot in the second year. We're just going to get rid of it. So there are fewer than they used to be, but there they are. So please, most of them are yes or no's. And as we go down, these two are optional Connecticut specific questions about the number of transactions or the number of patrons. I don't know how you're counting or who you're counting or what you're counting, but if you're counting, here's a place where you can provide that data. And then we can give it back to you on some fact flyers or advocacy sheets, or you can use that data in your own promotions to your stakeholders. So it's good to know what you did and for how many people. Okay, scrolling down again, section 7 is all about income. And section 8 is income, section 9 is expenses. For these three, sections 7 through 9, you want to count that income and the expenses in the years in which they actually occurred, right? So your income, it's based on when the money landed in your bank account. So somebody may have pledged to you, I'm going to give you $10,000, but it didn't actually show up for 4 more months. So make sure you're logging that income in the year in which it arrived and your expenses in the year in which they were paid. So just pay attention to those. Let's see, we're going to scroll down a little bit. Section 8, this is where If we pop up a little bit, this is your other operating income. So not from maybe municipal sources, but it's your contract services, your federal government income. So if you've got an LSTA grant, you're going to put it in here, 8.3. All other federal sources. Here, let me scroll a smidge. Oh, you know what I got? I also wanted to show you this ribbon, this stupid ribbon, which takes up all this space at the top. If we just click this little collapse the ribbon thing, oh my gosh, we have so much more space. Why didn't I do that like 45 minutes ago? So now we can actually see. Question 8.4, all other federal sources, and you see how there's that red little triangle in the upper right corner, and there's that pop-up box that says, put all of your PPP loans in here and your federal money from the state, such as Everybody Learns and ARPA grants. That's going to go into question 8.4. The numbers will go in there. And then in question 8.5, you'll just identify those sources. And here, as Hartford did, you might say Everybody Learns, you might say ARPA, you might say PPP loan, however those sources come to you. But these two numbers will get added up and become your total federal income, 8.6. And then as you scroll down, there's some state government income. So your borrow it money is already filled in. Maybe you got some other money from state sources, which is not your Everybody Learns and ARPA grants. See how the pop-up box says report those as federal income. So you can just take a look here and see what you might include as additional state income. And then some other sources, whether that's fundraising, endowment, invested funds. Other is a lovely catch-all. So that's your other income, capital income, all gets reported in section 8 there. Oh, I want to come back to question 8.4. All other federal sources for operating expenses. Most libraries that apply for E-rate are not receiving actual money from the E-rate program. You're just getting a discount on services that are provided to you. So most libraries will not report any E-rate income in this question. If you actually get a deposit from the FCC from E-rate, there may be 1 or 2 libraries in the state that are still doing it. You would report it here. But if your library instead just gets a discount that appears on your bill from CEN or another provider, then you will not report that as income because it's not actually income, right? There's nothing landing in your bank account. It's just a discount on services. So 2 different things. Let me scroll back up. Type in the report. John, your question, the ARPA fund did not get received until after July 2021. So that means you count your money in next year's annual report. Yep. So remember, this report covers the period July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. You'll report any activities that happened within that period. Circulation, holdings, programs, income, and expenses within that period. Things that happened outside that period either got reported last year or will get reported next year. So be very specific about the dates that you're following. Now let's scroll down. 8.12. If the friends gave your library money, gave your library a $10,000 check, you're going to enter that here. Donations from friend groups go into 8.12. Let's see, 8.23, this total library income often does not match your bottom line, and I apologize for that. It's just the questions that we ask are often very different from how your library is coming up with your total income. So just do the best you can with the numbers, do what you can, just give me the income that you can and we'll make it match. Great. So scrolling down a little bit more as we're getting into expenditures, I want to point out 9.6. If your library does swap circuits from CLC, you'll put that expense here. All other materials expenditure. What is that, like Flick things or audiobooks? That goes in there. 9.10, computer hardware, software, yada, 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 include your constant contact and visionware, website design, smush it into that one. And as we scroll down to 9.17, this is maybe a slightly different question. So if anything was paid for directly by the friends, you'll enter it here. So I know there are some libraries that maybe offer a database to their patrons, and the bill for that database goes directly to the friends. So the friends write a check to EBSCO or whoever for that database. The money never actually gets into the hands of the library. It just goes straight from the friends to the vendor. If that is the case with you, you're going to put that right here. You're going to add all of that information into 9.17. So with your friends, if you've got friends, lucky to have friends, capital F, really pay attention to where that money goes. If it comes into your library coffers as an actual donation from the friends, or if it's something that they're paying for directly. So you'll account for that differently. And we're almost done. As we scroll down, section 10 is the last. The 10.5 must be yes, or I can't accept your report. So it must be yes, that you certify that the director has seen this and confirmed it. Hopefully the directors are actually reading the report before they say yes and confirm it. I do encourage you to do that. And then you will double check here, this yellow box. If this yellow box is anything other than 0, you still have some unanswered questions, and you'll look at this column, question needs answer, and you'll figure out which ones those are. So those are things I look for. And as we scroll down, if you have comments, you can drop them into the comment box on your form. And that helps me get a sense of what's going on. So if there's anything wonky with your form, it's there. So one final bit, my last screen of advice, saying hopefully you are not waiting till the last minute and have either at least thought about starting or have started or will be starting ASAP. Please don't wait until the last minute, because it stresses you out and it stresses me out. And November 15 is actually a drop dead deadline. Also, that reminder, use your notes column. Be kind to your future self. Help yourself recreate those numbers next year, because we are going for consistency and accuracy, right? So that we are both adhering to the definitions in the questions and we are being consistent from year to year. Wherever you can, grab these numbers every single month so that it's super easy at the end of the year to total them up. And if you can, if you have people, distribute the workload where you can, right? So maybe tech services can help you with holdings, maybe CERC staff can help you with CERC. There's opportunity to grab your bookkeeper and get her in on a lot of these things. So keep distributing wherever you can. And remember, there's a lot of information on the definitions and instructions page, and there's a lot of information in those little pop-up comment boxes. So if you get stuck, make sure there's see if there's information in either of those spaces for you. And as a reminder, the final data is only as good as what I get from you guys. So please try to send me good data. Okay, we are at the end. I want to point out to you that there is going to be an evaluation form. You'll get a little email in a minute or two, or maybe an hour or two, with a link to this page, and I'm going to type it into the chat there. But if you would be so kind as to send me your feedback on this webinar, that would be great. Sometimes I can make changes based on your comments, and that's helpful to me. Let's see. Otherwise, everything is here on this annual report page. As I mentioned, that's going to be in the email with the evaluation link, and you'll be able to find our recording there probably later this afternoon or tomorrow morning, depending on how soon I can get it up on YouTube. Okay, I have answered, I think, all the questions that came in the chat. If you have anything lingering, now's the time to put it in there. Okay, I think I got everybody. Great, so I am going to turn you loose. Thank you very much for listening to me for an entire hour. I appreciate your time, and please be in touch if you have any questions. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.